Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, continuing our schedule previews of our way too early top 25 teams. And today we are taking a look at the 18th ranked Baylor Bears out of the Big 12, who were probably the biggest surprise in all of college football last season. The Bears went 11-3 and were just one win away from making the college football playoff in Matt Rhule's third year down in Waco. 1-11 in year one, 7-6 in year two, 11-3 with a Big 12 title appearance and a New Year's Six bowl game appearance in year three. It was truly unbelievable what we witnessed from the Bears in 2019. But now Matt Rhule is gone. Off to the NFL to coach the Carolina Panthers, which means that Dave Aranda is the new head man down in Waco. Aranda, one of the best defensive minds in all of college football, coming over from the reigning national champions in LSU, where he was defensive coordinator, now becoming the head coach of the Bears, and he unfortunately doesn't have too much to work with. While the Bears were one of the most surprising teams in all of college football last year, he is lucky to return Charlie Brewer at quarterback, who is one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the Big 12, maybe up there as one of the best QBs in the nation, but he loses his star wide receiver in Denzel Mims. The defense only returns 3 starters. Not much is there for the Bears. They got a lot of key pieces to replace, but this still is a Baylor team that we, of course, have ranked 18th in the country. We wouldn't have them up there if they didn't have the potential to have a successful season yet again. While they may take a step back, while they might not win 11 games and be playoff contenders, they're still going to be a threat in the Big 12. We take a look at their schedule here. Opening up the season against Ole Miss in Houston. That's going to be a great test to see where this Baylor football team is at the beginning of the year. Where this Baylor football team is in their first year under Dave Aranda. Because you're going up against an Ole Miss team that's kind of in the same boat as Baylor. Brand new head coach in Lane Kiffin. A lot of key pieces to replace, a lot of key pieces to figure out. But the one thing they do have is a great quarterback in John Rice Plumlee, who ran all over LSU's defense last year when Aranda was defensive coordinator. It'll be very interesting to see how the Bears handle that down in Houston. So a quality SEC opponent in week one, a great test for both of these brand new head coaches to see where their teams are before the season really gets going. They then jump right into Big 12 play in week 2, taking on Kansas, a team that Baylor won and beat 61-6 last year on the road. Kansas is one of those teams that they gave some teams really good fights, hung with them, some beat some of them. Baylor was not one of those teams where they showed up and played well. There's a very good chance that Baylor could be 4-0 before they jump into that game against Oklahoma on October 3rd. And of course, that's going to be a big one. Luckily, in the Big 12, there are 10 teams, no divisions. So we know that the top 2 teams are going to go. This isn't a game that's going to decide who wins a certain division, but it is a game that could decide who's going to be one of those final 2 teams that makes it to the Big 12 championship game. Last year, Baylor should have beaten Oklahoma both times. Baylor should have beaten Oklahoma in Waco. They probably should have beaten them again in the Big 12 championship game. They fell apart in both of those, more so in the one in Waco where they blew that 28-3 lead to Jalen Hurts and Lincoln Riley. So Oklahoma on the road, a team that has to replace a lot of key pieces, loses Jalen Hurts, loses CeeDee Lamb, key offensive pieces they've got to replace. It'll be very interesting to see how Lincoln Riley and the Sooners kind of prepare for that, especially the first year in a while that they have not had a transfer quarterback under center. So if Baylor is 4-0, they're going to be riding a lot of momentum into this game. They're going to be hungry to get revenge in this game. But with it being in Norman, it's going to make things a lot more difficult. So a game certainly you want to keep your eye on, October 3rd against Oklahoma. They get a bye week on October 10th, and then they don't get a full other week to prepare. They only get 5 days, facing off against Texas Tech on a Thursday night. And this game, of course, going to be on the road in Lubbock. And this is one, to me, that I view as a trap game for Baylor. This is one, I don't see many on the schedule that I view as a legitimate trap game. Maybe a game Baylor should win but won't. Texas Tech, to me, is one of them. Last year in Waco, Baylor only escaped winning 33-30 in double overtime. Keep in mind, Baylor won 11 games last year. Went to the Sugar Bowl, went to the Big 12 championship, but 5 of those 11 wins, guys, were decided by one possession. And that included 2 overtime victories. A double overtime victory over Texas Tech, a triple overtime victory over TCU, who they face in back-to-back weeks in 2020. Now, I look at this Texas Tech game here, guys. Coming off, you would say a short week, but they do get that week of rest beforehand, which is very beneficial. But going into Lubbock at night, not an easy place to play in my opinion. Matt Wells coming in year 2, certainly going to have his Red Raiders taking a step forward. A game where the Red Raiders should have won last year down in Waco. Is there reason to believe they might be able to get the win this year with a more experienced team, a less experienced Baylor team, and home field advantage on their side. So a major trap game for Dave Aranda and the Bears, October 15th at Texas Tech. And even though they're coming off a bye week, they could be on a little bit of a hangover if they do in fact lose that game against Oklahoma. We see it all the time with some of the elite teams. Bama hangovers. Last year could have been an LSU hangover. Will there be one 12 days after a potential loss at Oklahoma? They then get TCU on October 24th, a game that Baylor won 29-23 in triple overtime last year. A lot of people have TCU as a big-time Big 12 title contender in 2020. They weren't last year, but people are expecting big things out of Gary Patterson's squad this year. And as we all know, you never, ever, ever underestimate Gary Patterson. You never count him out. Never count out those Horned Frogs. Baylor, lucky enough to get them at home this year. I'll believe TCU hype when I see it. And we will certainly have a chance to see it from week 1 to October 24th. Plenty of games before then to really find out if TCU's the real deal or not. But certainly a game that Baylor can't afford to overlook, especially if they're coming off back-to-back losses here, or if they're dealt their first loss either against Texas Tech or Oklahoma. So something to watch out for. The biggest stretch of Baylor's season, though, the one that's going to be the toughest for them by far, begins on Halloween at Texas and concludes at West Virginia. Look, the Big 12 consists of 10 teams. We mentioned that earlier. There's a top half and a bottom half, in my opinion. The top half, 5 teams, consists of Baylor, going into 2020, Baylor, no order, Baylor, Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Baylor has to face off against 3 of those teams in 3 consecutive weeks. So to me, they are facing off against 60% of the top half of the Big 12. 3 of the top 5 teams of the Big 12 going into 2020, they face off against 3 of them in 3 consecutive weeks, and 2 of them are on the road. Does not bode well and does not set up a recipe for success for Dave Aranda and the Bears. You begin with Texas, a team that once again has sky-high expectations going into 2020. Sam Ehlinger is back. Yes, he loses some big-time wide receivers, but Chris Ash is in, former Rutgers head coach, coming in to try to revamp the defense. And with Sam Ehlinger, you trust. With Sam Ehlinger, he gives Texas a chance to win every game they are in because of his brilliant quarterback abilities. That game being on the road in Austin, not an easy place to play. Baylor only beat the Longhorns 24-10 last year. And once again, with it being on the road, I don't like their chances all too much. Once again, not making any predictions, but we can all agree it will be a very difficult test, especially if Texas finally lives up to their hype. They then get Oklahoma State at home. Baylor went on the road and defeated the Cowboys 45-27 last year. Kind of an unprecedented victory. I think a lot of people thought the Cowboys might win that game. And even if Baylor did win, it wouldn't be by that large of a margin. Their defense played lights out in that one. And they're going to have to do the same thing in 2020, going up against a dynamic Cowboys offense that gets their big 3 returning. Spencer Sanders at quarterback, Chuba Hubbard at running back, and then Tylan Wallace at wide receiver. Arguably the best running back and the best wide receiver in the Big 12 on the same team coming to Waco at the beginning of November. It's not going to be an easy test at all. It's going to be very, very difficult for the Bears. They then have to travel to Ames to take on Iowa State. I've said it over and over again. The Cyclones, playing there is one of the most difficult places to play in the entire country, I think. I think that state of Iowa, there's something in the air there because it's difficult to play at Kinnick and it's difficult to play at Jack Trice Stadium as well. The game at Iowa State, a game Baylor defeated Cyclones in 23-21 last year, nearly lost that game by blowing the lead. Once again, does not set up a recipe for success. Brock Purdy in at quarterback, an improving defense in my opinion, with a lot of key starters coming back on that side of the ball. If Iowa State builds up some chemistry with their wide receivers, offensive line plays a little bit better, this is a team that could very well make the Big 12 championship game. And they get to host the Bears at home. And then you've got West Virginia, who Baylor only defeated 17-14 last year, and who should take another step forward in Neil Brown's second year at the helm, as long as they can find some consistency at quarterback. 4-game stretch, Halloween to November 21st. Really, you can make it a 3-game stretch if you don't want to throw West Virginia in there. But they are playing 3 of the best teams in the Big 12 in 3 consecutive weeks, and 2 of those 3 are on the road. And they've got a road game at Oklahoma weeks before that as well. It's not good for the Bears. Not saying they can't get the job done, but it's going to be very, very difficult. They round out the year with a home game against Kansas State. Kind of like that Oklahoma State game, I think Baylor surprised a lot of people by going on the road and winning by as much as they did, defeating the Wildcats 31-12. But Chris Kleiman, once again, known for his defense, going to have another solid one during his time in Manhattan. Skylar Thompson returns at quarterback. It's going to give the Bears quite a bit of test as well. Dave Aranda has the pieces there to have a successful year in Waco. The Football Power Index is projecting the Bears early to go 5-7. And to me, that's another reason why you can't always trust the FPI. Because I do not see the Bears missing out on the postseason this year. They might not have an 11-win season like they did last year. That's okay. We knew that was going to happen. But I don't see them missing out on the postseason in 2020. I do not think Dave Aranda is going to let that happen. I do not think Charlie Brewer is going to let that happen. And despite what some may think, there is enough talent. Despite everything that they lost, there's still enough talent down in Waco for Baylor to make them contenders yet again in the Big 12. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check out everything down in the description below for some exclusive college football content, news, and offers you do not want to miss. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.